Hi, morning, Brother Peterson. Good to have you with us. If you want to unmute and say hello.
Hello, thank you for being here, brothers.
And where are you hailing from?
Excuse me. Yeah, I'm from Denmark.
Oh, very good. Glad to have you with us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Glad to be
you sound
here.
out of breath.
Yeah, precisely. I'm working outside. So.
Oh, okay. Brother Oliveris, you want to say hello? Good to have you with us again, brother.
Good morning to all. Hello.
Another one of our frequent flyers. Graham, you've been here pretty regularly. I think you've been here, what, 3 times, 4 times in a row?
Yeah, this is 3 times in a row.
Very good. Well, we appreciate frequent visitors. I'm waiting for Brian to get here, my co-host. There's John. Hello, morning, Brother John F. Good to have you with us. Going on mute, say hello.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. What's the F stand for?
Frank.
Frank. Oh, good to have you with us.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Morning, Brother Alejandro. Good to have you with us. You were muted, or now you're muted again. Getting the camera straight. You want to unmute, say hello, Alejandro? I'll give him a second. Coming up on 10 o'clock. There you are.
There we go. Good morning, everybody.
Hey, morning, brother.
Good morning.
Nice to have you with us.
Good morning. My name is Alejandro Dieguez, Cope Store Note for 108 Kearney, New Jersey.
New Jersey. All right. Good to have you here.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Hey, it's always, I never know where. So how did you find out about us?
So my prior job, I was traveling for animal research, and I went to every lodge, everywhere I traveled to. And I went to Virginia, and a fellow brother that I had met in my travels, he told me about a research lodge, and he shared the link with me, and I've been following you guys ever since. This is about
Cool.
a year and a half, 2 years now.
Oh, very good. I don't have you. Is this one of the first unstateds you've been to?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, good to have you here then.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Do you remember who it was who gave you the link?
At the moment, no, I do not.
That's quite all right. I'm glad he did. Morning, Brother Elias. Good to have you with us. And Brother Clark, who I'm going to go out on a limb and say he is in his truck at the moment.
Hi, Chris.
Good to have you here, brother.
Good morning, Brother Chris. How are you?
I'm good. Good to have you with us. So, Alejandro, are you on the mailing list as well as being in the group?
I am.
Good.
I get your guys' mailing list or your research papers all the time. I enjoy them immensely. I even asked permission from the Grand Lodge of Virginia, and I believe yourselves, if there are topics that I see interested, so I can bring to my lodge, and I was allowed to, as long as I give the appropriate recognition for them.
That is correct. Yes, I know you asked me because that's my standard response. And yes, for anyone here who gets our papers, if you are more than welcome to take any of the research papers that we send out and read them in your lodge. We encourage it. You can email them to other brothers if you like. All we ask is you give attribution, and at the top of the paper it has who the brother was who presented it and where, like what lodge and what day it was originally presented. You're more than welcome to share it in your lodge. Just say, this was from Brother so-and-so in Virginia Research Lodge on this date. That's all we ask. We do not give permission to republish them, like on your website or in a newspaper or in a newsletter book or anything like that. We don't allow that, but you're certainly welcome to reread them to other Masons. So we do plan to be publishing books at some point. It's something I've been looking into for a while. I think they might actually sell. I mean, I'm giving them away for free, but if we bind them, put them in an ebook, I don't know yet. We're still looking into that, but that's something we may start doing soon, of giving them out to guests and give them to speakers. People can buy them, what have you. So we're looking to publish.
That'd be great.
I think it would be fun for me to go in and since I've edited all of the ones for Virginia Research, I've laid hands on all of them, scanned them in, most of them from paper copy, and cleaned them up. So I'm familiar with them all. I'm going to pick like my favorite 10 or 12 and put them together in a book rather than just do, here's the first 5 years. Pick and choose ones that I think would be really interesting, because some are better than others. To be fair, some are more interesting than others. Some of them I published, and I'm like, yeah, but well, they read it, I'll publish it, maybe some like it. Some are really good. So I've noticed there's a difference in the quality. Just the more, I don't know if they're better written or just a better topic. I'm not sure, but I definitely see a variance. So I want to say, let me find the ones that I think are the best, that'll be most interesting, and then put those together for people. So it's fun. Just one of my many list of things I want to get to at some point. All right. So Brian is not here. I was giving him time to show, so I'm driving by myself today. Good morning, everyone. My name is Chris Douglas. I am your host. This is Virginia Research Lodge number 1777's semi-weekly unstated meeting. I'm going to go ahead and put in the chat. It's just after 10 o'clock here. I'm going to put this in the chat. Our links, if you're not already familiar. There's Kurt. First one is a link to our Facebook group. And again, many of you probably already have these, but we go through this so people who are new might know what we're doing. The Facebook group is for Research Lodge. Everyone is encouraged to join. We put our papers out there every week and links to events like this one. If you have an event that your lodge is sponsoring, an online meeting or even an in-person meeting, you are welcome to put them on our Facebook page. I tried to make our Facebook group a sort of a clearinghouse for online Zoom meetings, because there are so many out there and it's hard to keep track. So I encourage people, put them in ours and promote them there, and we share with a lot of people and hopefully get more attendance. We're always happy to encourage other people. And if you have research papers or anything you want to publish, you feel free. Next is our website, and that is where we host all of our papers, as well as some other interesting things I've built along the way. We have a Grand Lodge locator that I built that lists all of the Grand Lodges in the world that I managed to catalog with their websites, as well as all of the Virginia lodges and Facebook pages. Then we have our YouTube channel, where these meetings are all published on YouTube. I just published the one last night from last Saturday. And if you're watching us on YouTube sometime in the future, please like and subscribe. We appreciate that. We are small but growing. And finally, my email, if for some reason you're not on Facebook and you want to sign up for the research papers or contact me about anything else, you can hit me up on my email. But I'm on Facebook all the time, so it's easier to message me. I'm more likely to respond, and I prefer that for a lot of things. And I want to welcome Brother Brian Smith, who will join us when he gets off his call. I'm making him the co-host. And Brother Joyner from my lodge, good to have you with us. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I just wanted to say Diane and I celebrated our 22nd anniversary.
That's awesome. That's very cool. Congratulations. I also want to say hi to Brother Kurt, another frequent flyer. Good to have you with us, brother.
Brother Chris, good to see you.
And of you as always. All right, we have a good crowd today.
You know, Brother Chris, last night I was looking for something Masonic to review, and for the first time I tried looking you up on YouTube, and that worked really well. I missed the one on Kabbalah and Masonry, and I listened to that last night. That was excellent.
Oh, very good. I'm glad you enjoyed that. Yeah, we put those out on YouTube, as I mentioned. I'm glad. I always wonder, like, to me, it's much more fun to be in a Zoom meeting because you're there. You're watching it transpire. You can interact with the other brothers. You can ask questions of the speaker. I love the fact that technology lets us put this stuff out on YouTube, so people like Brother Kurt can go back later, see one they missed. I've gone back and watched one or two later on. I'm researching a paper right now on traditional observance masonry, because we had that paper, we had that group, the panelists that we had a year ago, and we talked about observant masonry, and I'm turning that into a paper to give into a lodge this month. So I've gone back and rewatched them, but I often wonder, it's like, well, Kurt, you've done both now. Is it better to be in the meeting and participate, or to watch it on YouTube, or is it like the same experience? Or
definitely better to be there in person and, or, live, because you can ask some questions like you pointed out before. I was fortunate on that one. I think somebody asked all the questions I was curious about, but
Well, that's good.
you can definitely it's definitely better to be able to interact, I think.
Right.
But if you miss it, it's a great alternative.
Indeed. Yeah. Well, I'm glad we make it available hopefully for a wider audience to watch it another time. And I don't know if you want to, you can watch it multiple times. But that's certainly your choice. But I'm glad we make that available. Yeah, I do. I'm glad we have both. I would encourage people to attend live and not just wait for the YouTube, obviously. But if you miss one, or if you joined us and we've been doing this for over a year, 2 years now, so you want to go back and watch old ones, there's an opportunity. So I think that's great. But I do like the fact that we have YouTube available so people can watch them. Okay.
May I ask what's the YouTube channel name?
Oh, yeah, I put it in the chat. It's Cigar Doug.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in the chat. It's youtube.com/Cigar Doug. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you already know that because you made it here. But yeah, I put the link there in the chat for y'all.
Oh, thank you.
We definitely encourage that. And Brian's still on the phone. I'm going to welcome him. Brother Rourke, good to have you with us today. I'm butchering your name, I'm sorry.
Good to be here.
Is it Rourke or Ruark? How do you say it?
Ruark, like kangaroos on the ark.
Okay, Ruark, so just phonetically. Well, good to have you with us, brother. I think we've tried to get you as a speaker, Brother Ruark, but we've not been able to line you up. Is that correct?
And juggling 5 kids and
Yes.
soccer practices and all that fun stuff. So once that dies down,
Okay,
I'll be more than happy to help.
I recognize the name. I do, of course, know so many people I interact with. And it's like, I remember names like, oh yeah, okay. So we did talk. I have to double check. So you're a potential speaker at some point in the future, but I think you've been here before. So good to have you joining us. Andy, are you active in a research lodge? Have you attended research lodges in the past?
I have not, other than I've done a couple of Zoom meetings with this one.
Okay.
We have a research lodge in North Carolina that is mostly online. They have guys come in and do programs, but it's usually at a time when I'm tied up with something else and don't get to log into it.
I understand. Okay. Brother, I forgot your name. Brother Frank? John? It's Frank, right? Yes. Sorry, you just have John F. I forgot your name.
Yes.
Are you active in a research lodge in your?
I am not. Don Straley is the one that gave me your information for today.
Oh, very good. What lodge are you a member of? I don't think I asked.
Cherrydale, Columbia, 42 in Arlington.
Oh, very good. Okay, Virginia brother. Well, I'm glad you were with us today.
Chris, you might want to mention when our next research lodge is.
Yeah, our next one will be in December, actually, and it will be Saturday, December 10th, and that will be in person, of course. That's at Highland Springs, Babcock Masonic Temple in Highland Springs. You are more than welcome to join us if you are close enough to Virginia. We would welcome you. Our current Grand Senior Deacon, Matt Sermosky, who will be Grand Junior Warden in another week at Grand Lodge, he will be our guest speaker, and he will be speaking about, I think it's the Silver Bullet and Membership, I think is the name of his paper, something like that. So that should be most interesting.
Good afternoon, Chris.
Hey, good.
Sorry about that.
Good morning, Brian.
Two staff suddenly decided that they wanted more pay.
Okay.
Yeah, that was fun.
A. Douglas Smith Jr. Lodge of Research is one of our, it's the second oldest second oldest research lodge in the state. Of course, Virginia Research started back in the 50s, were the oldest, but I have been delivering their papers as well. And this is one from a while back. So this is a paper on, and let me just look at my notes. This is a paper, I believe it was the first one given, if I'm not mistaken. One second. I want to make sure I have my notes correct. But this is on A. Douglas Smith. Yes, this is the first paper presented in A. Douglas Smith Jr. Lodge of Research number 1949. It's in honor of the Mason it was named for. So this was the very first paper presented in A. Douglas Smith Lodge. All right. Entitled Alfred Douglas Smith Jr. by Alan E. Roberts, past District Deputy Grand Master. Now, Alan Roberts, some of you may know, was our charter worshipful master of Virginia Research and our secretary for years and years and years. Alan Roberts did a whole lot in Masonry. He published a number of books. He gave, I don't know how many papers. He made movies. He did a lot of things Masonically and non-Masonically. I don't know that many Masons who made movies. I don't think you can count this as a movie, but a very prolific author and a cornerstone of not only our lodge, but A. Douglas Smith Lodge. He was part of its founding as well. So this is a history of the man that was this lodge was named for. And this was first given in 1983, January 1983. LSMFT once meant lucky strike, means fine tobacco. Right now it means let's stand, my fanny's tired. Sound familiar? It should. Is how A. Douglas Smith Jr. often gets an audience attention. Or how about it's time it's time to take a pee break, so let's do it, and then we'll talk for a few minutes. There aren't many of us that can get away with that. There are not many men who enjoy the respect, admiration, and love of most of the men and women who know him. There are even fewer men who can cover a great variety of subjects at any given time, who can change from comedy or buffoonery to the dignified and the serious. Doug Smith is one of this rare breed. Doug served as Grand Master of Masons in Virginia in 1949, the year after I became a Freemason. I saw him once dressed in his splendid regalia. The following year, I met him for the first time as executive officer for the DeMolay in Virginia. My lodge, Babcock, wanted to organize a chapter of DeMolay, and he was asked to meet with us and tell us what to do. He wasted so much of our time with malarkey. He and I had a brief argument, and we've been arguing ever since. In 1957, the Grand Master, Archer Bailey Gay, stressed the need for non-ritualistic Masonic education. He charged the Committee on Masonic Information, Research, and Publications, that's the title, to devise a plan to accomplish this. It got nowhere under the appointed chairman, so somehow A. Douglas Smith Jr., not an appointed member of the committee, took over, probably under instructions from the Grand Master. Doug immediately made unprecedented changes. Among them was making me a junior warden and unofficial grass rooter. One of the most important arguments Doug made was to call a meeting of this revised committee and include the elected Grand Lodge officers. He knew from bitter past experience, continuity in any Grand Lodge is most important. You don't get it unless the line officers are on speaking terms and are free to offer their input. This continuity continued until 1970, and Virginia Freemasonry was the beneficiary. Earl S. Wallace liked what he had seen, so in 1958, he officially appointed Doug Smith chairman of the Committee on Masonic Information, Research, and Publications. I continued as a grass rooter and inputter until the following year when I reached the height of my Masonic career and was made a full-fledged member. Why is all this background important? Because it marked one of the highlights in the many milestones of Doug Smith's Masonic career. Although Thomas J. Traylor had seen the need to educate the Freemasons in Virginia and worked toward that end, his efforts went for naught. He didn't have a firebrand such as Doug Smith to run with the ball, a fellow who knew how to find the men to do the job, and then how to get the best out of them. From the beginning of his leadership in Masonic education, Doug made it clear that those who didn't work on his committee would be fired. He meant it, he did it. He made it an honor to be a member of the Committee on Masonic Information Research and Publications, which was later changed to Education. And this was at a time when the expenses of committeemen weren't paid. Not even the cost of postage was reimbursed. Doug is a tyrant when it comes to Freemasonry and expects everyone else to feel as he does. Yet he is a paradox. He wants everyone to love and respect him, yet he's often blunt, and a few consider him uncouth. But we would have gotten along. He wears his feelings for all to see, but he still doesn't realize this. Doug has never forgiven a past Grand Master who has blackballed him for membership in an invitational Masonic body. I suspect he will carry this malice to the grave. He is one of the most precarious men I know. We have traveled thousands of miles together over the years, often to places where he is to speak. He becomes a nervous wreck, constantly worrying about how he will be received. Over and over again, I've suggested he stop making speeches. I fear the anxiety would drive him to an early grave. I pointed out that if speaking troubled me as it does him, I'd quit right now. Doug can't and won't quit, though. He's often pointed out that he's still trying to earn the title of Most Worshipful. He won't believe he has earned it many times over. Many of us have recognized this for years. One of them is Stuart Wilson Minor. Stu Minor is another founding member of our research lodge and A. Douglas Smith. So he has quite a few papers under his name as well as Brother Allen. Last year, Stu asked me if I would form a lodge named for Doug Smith in Northern Virginia. I suggested it be a lodge of research for two reasons. One, Masonic education and research are Doug's passions. Witness his work on the committee, and he was instrumental in forming Virginia Research Lodge. Secondly, if the lodge is in the least southernmost part of Virginia, Doug's terminology, were like those in the Richmond area, the opposition would be devastating. You are witnesses to the happy results today of A. Douglas Smith Jr. Lodge of Research number 1949. By the way, 1949 was the year that A. Douglas Smith was Grand Master. So this is like almost 40 years later that they formed this research lodge. A. Douglas Smith, this is an aside, this is me talking. A. Douglas Smith was active for at least another 10 years in this research lodge. He was in his 80s by then. And he was Grand Master 40 years previously, but he was still going strong. As noted, Doug and I have been arguing since the first day we met. Rarely do I win, but I did once. We were in South Boston for a leadership meeting. On the way, he told me Jesse White, the then Grand Master, wanted to add a fellow from Norfolk to the committee with the long name. I thought another fellow from there would be ideal. We continued our discussion in the motel room until 2 o'clock in the morning. He finally agreed with me, or perhaps he decided he needed to go to sleep. At any rate, my friend was appointed, but in the long run, I lost. My friend has become a bitter enemy. The Midwest Conference on Masonic Education was formed in the early 50s. It provided an access to the craft. The Grand Lodges in the Northeast decided to emulate the Midwest. Among those approached for input were Doug Smith and Archer Gay. They leaned towards the newly formed Southeast Conference, but backed away when they found this conference a glorified mini Grand Masters and Grand Secretaries organization. Consequently, Virginia became a member of that Yankee and Northern organization called the Northeast Conference on Masonic Education and Libraries. I don't know if any of these conferences are still around today, by the way. Through a fluke, Doug involved me in this conference almost from its inception. In 1961, the conference was to meet in Richmond. Doug wanted to show those Northerners that John Marshall was a Freemason and a past Grand Master of Masons of Virginia. He asked me to help him prove it. With a little research, we found a way. A play called Lafayette's Visits to the Masons of Richmond became the vehicle. A group of actors from Babcock Lodge helped, and we put on that play in Mason's Hall, the oldest Masonic temple in the United States. Through Doug, I've met many of the great Freemasons in the country. He knows everyone that is anyone in the craft. By being allowed to sit at the feet of these dedicated Masons, I learned more about the aims, goals, and purposes of the exalted who had come and gone. I also learned of the politics we aren't supposed to have in this fraternity of brothers. One evening stands out in my memory. It was in 1963 during a Northeast conference. About 16 men, all of them 33rd degree Scottish Rite Masons from both jurisdictions, except from me. Without exception, they deplored the conferral of that degree. Why? Because 90% who receive it have done little or nothing for Freemasonry. Other considerations were factors in the anointing. One of Doug Smith's greatest faults, if it can be called that, is loving Masonry too much. From the day he was raised, November 29th, 1926, his work for the craft. That was like 60 or so years before this paper. So he's in his 80s by then. It was in Lewis Ginter Lodge number 317 that occurred, and to that lodge he has given his allegiance. He and his father had wanted him to petition his father's lodge, but an unmasonic series of rejections had been taking place there, so they didn't risk it. In 1933, during the Great Depression, he served his lodge as his worshipful master. In 1937, he was appointed District Deputy Grand Master of the 15th Masonic District during a highly political and again unmasonic period. Wow. In 1942, Doug was Dr. Barrett's choice for Grand Junior Deacon, but he was defeated. But in 1944, he was elected. I should say there was a time when we actually had competition for Grand Junior Deacon, which is the first elected step in the Grand Line in Virginia. They've done away with the requirement. We also had it in the Blue Lodge. You had to have 2 people nominated for Junior Deacon, but it became just a formality, so they finally dropped it. But now it's the Grand Master pretty much choose who he wants to go in. You can still run people against him, but it typically doesn't happen. But at times in our past, there was serious competition. There was electioneering for Grand Junior Deacon in our Grand Line. In 1949, he served with distinction as the Masons of Virginia as their Grand Master. During the Grand Lodge session of February 1950, he proved his statesmanship. A strong movement was mounted to move the headquarters of the Grand Lodge to either Roanoke or Norfolk. It remained in Richmond. As Grand Master, Doug advocated the formation of a research lodge, and he broke the ground for a dispensation presented to the Grand Lodge in 1950 for the formation of such a lodge. It passed, and he was elected as first junior deacon, an office he proudly held until 1958, when he became senior deacon on the retirement of James Noah Hillman as the lodge's master. In 1962, he became its master, and to my surprise, he nominated me for junior deacon. Doug is proud of the many things he accomplished for the craft throughout the years. He can point with pride to his 18 years as editor of the Virginia Masonic Herald. That's our quarterly magazine. He can brag about raising $65,000 for the endowment fund of the Masonic home in 1939, when everyone said it couldn't be done. Throughout the Masonic world, the name of Alfred Douglas Smith Jr. is synonymous with Freemasonry and the Order of Demolay. No more appropriate name can any Masonic lodge honor. Doug's civic activities have been and are many and varied. He has put the principles of Freemasonry to work in the secular world. In the spiritual world, he has been a lifelong member of the First English Lutheran Church. For over 25 years, he taught the men's Bible class, frequently has rushed home to carry out this commitment. One of his bitterest disappointments is his church's refusal to recognize Freemasonry as an adjunct to the teachings of the great man of the Bible. You honor me highly by giving me this opportunity to present the first paper in the A. Douglas Smith Jr. Lodge of Research. If the lodge proves to be as excellent as the name bears, all of us associated with the craft will be rewarded. May God bless each of you and your lodge in the days and years ahead. All right. Thank you all for making do with your substitute paper. Any comments? Anybody have anything? Any questions? Please speak. Need to unmute. I muted everybody, so go ahead, unmute Mike.
Maryland still campaigns. I was at Annapolis Lodge about a year ago, and actually a guy I know from the Silver Spring Lodge was running for, I think, Grand Senior Deacon. So
Okay.
that's Maryland's. They will still have multiple candidates, and when they go to their Grand Lodge, they vote between them. So and last year at Grand Lodge, I sat at the table with the Deputy Grand Master of Massachusetts, who told me that even though he was Deputy Grand Master, did not assure him that he would,
Grand Master.
Yeah.
Wow.
That he was not going to be. He was probably not going to be Grand Master of Massachusetts in the next year because again, they had to vote, against other people. So Virginia, yes, you and I know has a guaranteed lot of ascension once you're in there. Mm-hmm. But and then of course other states too. The Grand Master serves a 2-year term automatically. So I was curious from some of the other states that we have here, what type of succession they have.
Yeah.
In North Carolina, the Grand Master appoints the Junior Grand Steward. Okay. And he progresses up until he is elected Junior Grand Warden, but there's nobody running against him. So you don't run.
And I want to know, it's junior grand warden for y'all. It's grand
Yes.
junior warden for, it's grand in the title for all of ours.
Yeah.
I noticed that other states, they move the grand to the middle. So junior grand warden is the first elected position.
Yes.
Okay.
And we have had, now I've been a Mason for January will be 42 years. In my time, in 2000, we had our annual communication in September to elect a Grand Master for the following year. The Grand Master is elected in September and he is installed the first Saturday in December. But on the first ballot, he was something like 31 or 32 votes shy of having the requisite 2/3 majority. And he stood up, said that my father was Grand Master and no son has ever followed in his father's footsteps as Grand Master, took his apron off and walked off the stage. And 4 ballots later, they elevated the senior Grand Warden to Grand Master.
Not him, some other guy.
Yes, they elected some other guy.
Wow.
and that was one time. Now, this was way before my time. The Grand Lodge was in Raleigh that year, and it took all day. The election has to start prior to 11 o'clock, and they had, I forget how many ballots they told me they had, but they were sequestered in the building until they had an election, and the man that was the deputy Grand Master was not elected.
Damn.
Now that was some backroom politics going on there, because from what I understand, he had made a few statements of what he wanted to do and what he wanted to change. And
you never do that. Never tell people what you want to do. You'll never get anywhere.
But that's the 2 times that I know of. Now,
Wow.
This year, I was not at Grand Lodge this year, but this year it took several ballots to elect the Grand Master. The deputy Grand Master was eventually elected, but it took several ballots to do it.
I will say here in Virginia, we have the Grand line is very similar to the Blue Lodge line, except they have a couple extra things in there, like Pursuivant and Provost and all these other things. But every position is there are a number of appointed positions until you get to the Grand Junior Deacon, and then Grand Junior Deacon, Senior Deacon, Junior Warden, Senior Warden, Deputy Grand Master, and Grand Master are the elected ones, and then Secretary and Treasurer are elected year after year after year, just like in the Blue Lodge. And you're almost always a past Grand Master who gets to be Grand Secretary or Grand Treasurer. But the Grand Master can appoint, there's about, I don't know, I have to count them up. There's at least like 15 appointed positions. And it's not like in a well-run Blue Lodge where you have people queuing up to be an officer and you're junior steward, then senior steward, and then you're likely junior deacon. I was in a lodge the first time I was master. I actually got to be junior steward, senior steward, junior deacon. I was the last one in my lodge for 20 years and they folded to do that. Everybody else just came in the door and they got junior deacon. So in the Grand line, there is no assurance. If you're a Grand Steward, senior steward, or junior steward, it doesn't really mean anything. I mean, it's an honor, but it's not like you're the next guy for junior deacon. Every year, whoever the Grand Junior Deacon is, because you look at it this way, let's say, Andy, you're Grand Master this year and John is Grand Master next year. Andy appoints whoever he wants as his stewards and everything else. John comes in and picks somebody totally out of the blue, never been a Grand Officer at all, and puts him in, nominates him for Grand Junior Deacon. So there is no ascension you can look at until you're elected. Now, I have not seen, Michael, you might know, but I have never seen once someone goes in line as Grand Junior Deacon, unless they die, and I think only one person got sick and stepped down, you pretty much go through the chairs. We do not have any sort of nominations against you once you're Grand Junior Deacon, and even Grand Junior Deacon is rare. You can still have it. I'm saying at one time when I joined back in the 80s, it was you would automatically have someone nominated for Grand Junior Deacon. just like in the Blue Lodge, they always nominate someone for junior deacon against the candidate that the master picked. And it's a formality, and it's always like 15-1. They have to go through the pretext of having tellers. And eventually the Grand Lodges did away with it because it was pointless. There was no real reason to require it be contested. So I'm glad they dropped that.
See, in North Carolina, in the Blue Lodge, there is no running. You know, they pass the ballot out and you write down the name that you want for that position. And of course, the deacons aren't elected anyway.
Okay, it's just started with the junior warden.
The three principal officers, the treasurer, and the secretary is elected. Now, our Grand Lodge.
Does the master nominate anyone for those positions?
No, nobody's nominated.
Really?
Nobody's nominated. Now, in our Grand Lodge, in my time, all of the grand treasurers has been past grand masters. And in my time, we've had 3 grand treasurers.
Right.
In my time, we have had 3 grand secretaries, none of which were past grand masters. 2 of them was assistant to the grand secretary, and upon the grand secretary's retirement, they were appointed to fill that position to the end of the year, and then they were ultimately elected.
Right.
And our immediate past grand secretary served for over 20 years before he retired.
Right. Wow. I do remember in DMLA, bringing up DMLA, since A. Douglas Smith Jr. was a member of, he was a DMLA advisor. I was in DMLA myself, grew up in Washington State, and we had, at the time there, we elected, let's see, you had junior council, state junior counselor, senior counselor, and deputy state master counselor and state master counselor, and then state scribe was also elected. He's like the secretary. I was there the first conclave we went to, which is like Grand Lodge. There was the state scribe ran for deputy state against the current state senior counselor. We backed him, and he won. And he went on to be deputy. But it was an unwritten rule. You did not run against the state master counselor. You could run for deputy state, and we did. But it was a given that once you're deputy state, you're going to be state master counselor the next year. Because it's real, and I think in the Blue Lodge, I would argue it should be the same way. You should reach a point where you should not be showing up at Grand Lodge and not know that you're going to be Grand Master that year. You need that whole year to plan your term. So you would think deputy would be the last possible point where you could lose, because everyone needs a full year to get your term ready. It'd be unthinkable to show up at Grand Lodge, I think, planning to be installed as Grand Master that year and not have it happen. I just can't imagine.
I have a good friend who was a past Grand Master, and I have heard him say on multiple occasions that you need to have your year as Grand Master planned by the time you're Junior Grand Warden.
Yes, absolutely.
And during this election that I spoke of in 2000, the Junior Grand Warden got a lot of votes. And he finally ended up standing up and saying, brethren, it takes a certain amount of time to be prepared to be Grand Master. And at this time, I'm not prepared.
Oh, wow.
And on the next ballot, the Senior Grand Warden was elected.
Huh.
But so he wanted to make sure that by the time he got to be Grand Master, that he was ready. And of course, 2 years later, he was Grand Master.
Right.
And he was a good one.
Right. Hey, Brian, do you guys have these kind of issues? Well, again, your Grand Master, the actual one is the Royal, who gets it year after year. But I forget it. The pro Grand Master, the guy who actually the CEO is elected from the masses. How does that work for y'all? If you want to unmute, you're muted.
Theoretically, I think he's elected, but we just had one recently. And I didn't hear or read of any election at all. He just suddenly appeared out of the blue.
Okay.
So I think it might be a little bit of old boys act.
And his title is, he's the pro Grandmaster, is that correct?
Yeah, pro Grandmaster.
And is pro short for somebody or is it just PRO?
It is short for something. It's
Provisional or
Original.
something
provincial?
like that. So I must say you caught me on the hop.
I'm sorry.
But yeah, he's the new guy. Is all singing, all dancing. Wants to improve Freemasonry, make it so much friendlier, happier, and give flowers to everyone and all the rest of this rubbish.
Okay.
He's an ex Cambridge Don, so he's pretty well educated as well. What difference that makes to us, I do not know.
Does he now? Is
Probably
that
not.
typically multiple years that the program master serves, or is it 1 year?
Until he gets fed up.
Okay, so a long time. Okay, so and you don't have like a progressive line then, like we would, like we're talking about.
No, I mean further down the food chain, there's probably a progressive line, but there, as far as I'm aware, there isn't any.
Interesting.
Your next
I
speaker,
think you'll find that he's the program master because the Grand Masters are royal.
Right.
yeah, that's done. I mean, the Grand Master you can't get. What we're talking about is what the program master did and how he was appointed.
Yeah, I remember someone commented the other day. It's like, is Prince Charles someone? I guess someone in Scotland or England, or it may have been here. I don't know, but someone made up this jewel that had Prince Charles or King Charles, sorry, the King's seal, and then a square and compass around it. And they were selling that. You probably saw it, Brian. And someone asked a question: Is King Charles a Mason? It's like, well, no, because is he Grand Master? And I pointed out, I said, no, he would have been Grand Master 30, 40 years ago because he's the senior royal, and it's been the Duke of Kent as long as I've been aware that you guys put your royal in charge. And the Duke of Kent doesn't rotate that. Among Charles and William and Harry, all of them, the titles, they all just swapped out. The Duke of Kent isn't among them, correct? That's further down the food chain.
He is. I think he's number 30 in the line of succession.
Okay, right. Because I know Charles was Prince of Wales.
That's right.
And now William is, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Charles was, both of them were, Charles was Prince of Wales and Duke of Cornwall. Now Prince William is.
Right. Oh, that's your area, Cornwall.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Which is why I mentioned it.
Okay.
And
Right,
Duke
so
of Rothesay as well.
What's that,
Sorry?
Graham?
And Duke of Rothesay as well.
Yes. I well, there's a host of titles, I know.
Yeah.
But so the Duke of Kent is way down, so he typically doesn't move. As people
but you got
die
Prince-
and move up, the Duke of Kent generally doesn't move. He stays
Well,
where
he
he
may
goes.
Prince Michael of Kent. He's
What's that?
Prince Michael of Kent. He's the head of Freemasonry in the UK.
Correct.
And then you've got the Duke of Kent, who's the head of Mark Master Masons in the UK.
Oh, I thought
They're the same person.
are they the same?
They're the same person. The Duke
Yeah.
of Kent
Yeah.
is a total.
No, it's a different person.
Let's have a look. Let's head for Facebook.
No, a different person altogether.
We need to settle this. Brian is going to look this up for us. I know he's been called the Duke of Kent. I mean, okay, so my own little story here. Back when I was waiting tables at a Pizza Hut in Chesapeake, Virginia, I think it was, this brother came in. Now, this is my introduction to English Masonry, okay? And I've been a Mason like a few years. I wore my Masonic ring when I was waiting tables because it did help with tips. This fella was a customer, came in by himself, got pizza, and I came back to check on him, and I suddenly noticed that he had a Masonic ring, and I don't know how I didn't notice it before. So I talked to him a little bit. Turns out he was a Mason, and he was traveling to the U.S. on business, and we talked a bit. He ended up actually visiting my lodge a couple times while he was in the States and then leaving again. And I found out later, it's like, how is it I didn't notice your ring? Well, he had a signet ring that you take it off and the little gold piece that's flat, it flips over. So it's like gold with a little etching with his initial or something. And then you flip it over and it's got a black background with a little square and compass. So he saw I was a Mason, turned his ring around. And when I came back to the table, I noticed it. So I guess, and that's what I learned, that the Brits tend to keep their masonry more on the QT. They do not shine their light, as my Prince Hall brothers like to say, that whereas we garishly walk around with all of the lapel pins and the bumper stickers and the hats and the rings and showing it off everywhere, the Brits are a little more low key about it. So if they don't want you to know you're a Mason, they kind of hid it. But he informed me the Duke of Kent, same guy, I think. So this has been like
Prince Michael's
later.
the Duke of Kent.
Yeah. I believe it's the same guy. Go ahead, Graham. Sorry.
No, there's a different one. There's a different one that holds the Mark Master Mason one. I just
And what's
can't
his
find
title?
who he is at the moment.
So Brian, the Duke of Kent has been there for a good long while.
Yes, he has.
Oh, yeah.
So the same one that he was telling me about, Cathersides, that was his name. I can't remember the fellow's last name. But he told me how the Duke of, he was the one who told me that the senior royal, who is a Mason, is their Grand Master. And that really kind of, that's always stuck with me. But I learned that, like I said, 30 some years ago. But it's still the same guy.
In Victoria,
Uh-huh.
in 1987, they held an election for Grand Master. And you'd be interested to know that when they handed out the ballots, they had two ballot boxes. If you're going to vote for this one, you put it in this box. If you're going to vote for that one, you put it in that box. And they were standing there watching you. And
that's not right.
In the end, they decided to do away with the election of Grand Master, and you, as I understand it now, you vote for the Deputy Grand Master, and he does 2 years as Deputy, and you don't vote for the Grand Master at all because the Deputy steps up to be the Grand Master.
Okay.
And Jeremy is correct. The Duke of Kent is the Grand Master, and Prince Michael of Kent is the Grand Master of Mark Master Masons.
What's that again, Brian? I'm sorry.
Duke of Kent is the Grand Master, and
Yes.
Prince Michael of Kent is the Grand Master of Mark Master Masons.
And as far as the royals are concerned, does the Prince of Kent outrank the Duke of Kent in the royal line?
I have no idea.
I would think, okay, now, I know that I thought that a prince outranks a duke, but, that's just from fairy tales I heard growing up, so I don't know.
But it does mean that possibly he might step up as and when the Duke of Kent pops his clogs.
Okay. All right. Oh, Jonathan posted a question. Yeah, y'all really should ask your questions in the group rather than in the chat, because I don't always see the chat. I let people looking over here. Grand Oh, Jonathan asked, what do you think about having Grandmasters serve for more than 1 year? I think, just my opinion, some states have this where you serve 2 years. I would think in some cases, it might be better for someone to serve 2 years just so they can visit as many lodges as possible. But you think about it, in Virginia, you have to make your official visits to every district once a year. There are about 50 districts in Virginia, and most of y'all know the size of Virginia as a state. Brian, did we ever sit down and figure that out? Is Virginia roughly the size of what European country? I don't think we ever sat down and figured that out.
I would guess Virginia's a relatively small state, isn't it, compared to the rest of
I think it's about average. I don't know.
that helps.
I don't know. Well, I mean, it seems,
we have some size of an average European country.
As far as mean, we're like in the mean, I think. I'll have like a lot of them, like the colony. I guess the ones out west are a little bit bigger. Virginia is bigger than a lot of the other states on the East Coast. It seems we're a little longer, but square foot, I guess if I looked up the square miles, I could look it up, but I don't want to bore everybody while I'm looking up stuff. Michael, you're not doing nothing. Look up the square mileage of Virginia. Give us a rough idea of how, just compare it to other countries. Go ahead.
I saw it. It's 42,775 square miles.
42,000 square miles. So just compare that. Well, we have to convert that to farthings or something when we're going over to Europe. So.
I'll try to.
Anyway. So Virginia, to me, Virginia is a good sized state. Let's just put it that way. And we have
times the size of UK.
Okay, there you go. So for the Grandmaster to go and visit every district, and like I said, there's 45 districts, I think now. He's required to visit every single district once during his year. He then visits probably 20 or 30 lodges as an official visit during that same time. Like Norfolk #1 is the oldest lodge in Virginia. It's in my district in 35, and he will always visit Norfolk every year. So he may only visit one or two in my neck of the woods. I mean, he'll visit his own lodge, of course, and some of the bigger ones across the state. So he has a lot on his plate to go once a year, but everyone, the whole point is, as long as you can make it to your district's official visit, you get to lay eyes on the Grand Master, shake his hand, get his little lapel pin every year. You get to meet every Grand Master once a year and interact with him. I kind of like that idea, which is why I thought the idea that some advent of, hey, let's have a Grand Master for all of the U.S., why it fell apart is there's no conceivable way a Grand Master could effectively visit every single state, let alone every major city or every county, you know, in the whole country. He never would be able to, which means the more populous areas would get a visit from the Grand Master all the time. He might come to Richmond, say, or Northern Virginia. He'd probably be based in DC or something, and you'd never see him in Norfolk. So the Grand Master would be separate from the Masons in his charge, which is why I think having a Grand Master for the whole country is a bad idea. Just my
unless you did use the English method plan and add then provincial Grand Masters.
Exactly, but then that's not the guy, is it? It's your provincial guy. So. Anyhow, but as far as serving 2 years, I guess if you serve 2 years, then you would only have to plan an official visit every other year. And as long as everyone got a chance to meet the Grand Master at least once during his term, I guess it wouldn't be too horrible. But I don't know. I honestly, I look at Grand Masters and what they accomplish. They have a year to do what they want. Their year, do they generally change Masonry going forward, where after this year, after this guy was in office, oh my goodness, things are totally different. I mean, honestly, most of their programs are in effect for a year. If they're really popular, they may get continued. If they're not, okay, we did that this year. It's kind of like everyone has to wear a pink tie at every stated meeting. He can issue an edict. Everybody has to wear a pink tie that year. And then after a year, we said that's a silly idea. It doesn't get approved, and his edicts just kind of go away. They don't become law. So I like our process where the Grand Master can say, we're going to do this. And if it don't go anywhere, you only have to suffer for a year with it. Unlike, say, the taking the American flag and presenting it at the altar and then in the East. That got started like 3 years ago, and it seems to be pretty much codified. I think, Michael, is it officially in the rules, or is it every year?
I think it was, and I hate to say because I know what lodge calls that, and that was mine, number 19. Let me tell you the story behind that. What happened was we had a master about 8 years ago that said, you know what? It's not in the Methodical Digest when to do the Pledge of Allegiance. So he did it at breakfast. And that, the Grand Lodge, at the end of breakfast, we did that.
To clarify, you had your meetings on like a Saturday morning.
Yes.
Okay, so it's not like you come in for breakfast, come back at 7 for your stated. Okay.
Yeah, our state is at 9 a.m. on Saturday, and our breakfast is at 8. And he would do the Pledge of Allegiance at breakfast. Well, that got back to the Grand Lodge, and they grumbled about that, but then they realized it's not Methodical Digest. Right. So then what happened was that's how it became part of ritual, and they gave you 3 methods of presenting the flag. You can have the marshal do it by himself. You can have the marshal under the escort of the senior deacon or both the senior and junior deacons, which is most common there. But I see it done all
or it's both deacons.
Yes.
Or it's the senior deacon presents it.
The senior deacon presents it without a marshal. The marshal presents it, or the marshal does it with all 3 of them. And that came about because Paul said, hey, this is not a Methodical Digest. If I want to do it at breakfast, I'll do it at breakfast. And, again, it's one of those things nobody ever paid attention of.
But now, and it's been a bone, for those of you who are not in Virginia, it's been a bone of contention because it's mandated at every meeting. Every meeting. Like if you're just if you're opening on the entered apprentice degree to confer the entered apprentice degree, you have to salute the flag. We typically do, but we just turn as soon as the master finishes and opens as soon as, that is in the, by the way, that is in the ritual, not in the Methodical Digest. It is in the ritual that the master, before he calls the junior deacon and tells him to, tell the tower we're open, and it leaves everybody standing, and then he does the flag because we're all still standing. But you salute the flag in the East. That is in the ritual. The Committee on Work, who is responsible for the ritual, had a bit of a hissy and saying, we are not going to teach you how to present the flag at the altar because it's not in the ritual. So it's in an edict from the Grand Master, so we have to do it. But the Committee on Work was being snippy and said, we're not going to teach you how to do it. So every lodge, instead of having a coach from the Grand Lodge that officially tells you the right way to do it and walks you through it, every lodge has to read a piece of paper, and maybe your lodge instructor work takes it on and says, okay, here we're going to follow the piece of paper and here I do it. So it's very clunky in the way it got put out there. And it took a lot of practice for people to get the habit of where to have the deacons walk and all like that. So that's an example of something that was an edict. And typically an edict is the Grand Master says, I'm doing this year, you will all do it. And then at the end of the year, he submits it to the Committee on Jurisprudence, and then all of the Grand Lodge there, past Grand Masters, everybody weighs in. And it either becomes Masonic law and we do it forever, or it just kind of goes away. And it was just a one-time edict. But it seems like every year, each new Grand Master issues the same edict. And I guess at some point they'll put it in the Methodical Digest, but they haven't yet. Is that a good way of summing up, Mike?
You know, my point too.
Okay, sorry.
Go ahead, Kurt. Sorry.
I know we do the Pledge of Allegiance like right after the prayer all the time, but do you actually present the flag? Do you actually walk it in?
Yes, it sits next to the marshal, who is at the left of the senior warden. So
Yes.
like your senior warden's in the west. Well, I'm saying for I don't know how it is in Michigan, right?
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin.
I'm
Same thing. Wisconsin. Your senior warden. Just kidding. Your senior warden has the junior deacon on his right for the door and the marshal on his left. And so the marshal takes it to the altar and then to the east. Or the deacons come down and meet him at the altar and escort it to the east. That's how it's presented.
Okay, so that's in Grand Lodge, right?
That's every lodge.
Every lodge.
That's in every Blue Lodge. The Grand
So
Master
every-
said you will do this in all of your Blue Lodge meetings. So every single Blue Lodge meeting, you have a 5-minute ceremony of presenting the flag instead of just turning and saying, everybody recite the Pledge of Allegiance, and you say it. That's the complaint, that they have to. It's not optional. If it were only a stated, just my opinion, if it were required at stateds, but not other meetings, I'd be fine with it, but it adds so much, and you have to have a marshal or use senior deacon, I guess. It just seems like it adds a whole lot to a meeting that's unnecessary. That's just my take. But
So every Blue Lodge has a marshal as well?
correct. The marshal, and here's a funny thing. We were talking about earlier about appointed positions. In our Blue Lodge, you have the chaplain and the marshal and the stewards and the Tyler are appointed. We also have an organist, which few people have. My lodge has a lodge historian, and I actually wrote an installation piece when I installed the officers for the lodge historian that we wrote similar to the wording of the other ones. So the appointed officers can rotate year in, year out. The marshal's job is to conduct public ceremonies such as funerals. He never, ever, 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 ever does that ever. We have a funeral committee and we don't march to funerals. So the marshal is the most pointless position in the lodge because he doesn't do a single thing in or out of our lodge. He does nothing. And we appoint one every year. And he sits there all year and he stands up on 2 wraps and he does nothing. He has no line in the opening. So this gave the marshal something to do. But to me, the marshal's a kind of a pointless position.
Well,
but everybody appoints one.
the marshal also is supposed to guard the West Gate during elections. That's that's another official job.
Right. Yes.
And a lot of them forget to do that.
That's true. It is one of those things that, I mean, the stewards at least have a job. The stewards prepare the candidate. The stewards prepare the food. They have a real job in a lodge. Everyone else, every office has a real useful purpose. I think the marshal is something you could probably ditch and you wouldn't really notice.
So, Graham, do you plead allegiance to the flag in Australia?
Sorry?
Do you plead allegiance to any flag in Australia when you open a lodge?
No, we don't have a Pledge of Allegiance as such, no.
Same in the UK. Yeah, that feels very, very weird.
We used to do it at school, and that that got dropped, but you know, we don't.
You do have. I'm sorry. You have a pledge. You just generally people don't do it.
Oh no, we just had a school pledge. You know.
Okay. Okay.
You honour the flag. You honour God, and Queen, or the King in this case, and
Right. Okay.
you know,
That's not-
national flag. Good family
Yeah.
relations.
The pledge is very much an American thing. I don't know. It is. And by the way, and if you were here for the Observant Lodge discussion last year, one of the things that some people in America have an issue with is requiring the Pledge of Allegiance in a Masonic lodge because, and I see their argument, you're requiring people, you say all citizens of the United States would join me in pledging allegiance to the flag of our country. So Brian, if you were gracious enough to visit my lodge one time, I wouldn't make you stand. Well, you probably stand because we rap 3 times, but I wouldn't require you to put your hand over your heart and say the pledge because you're not an American.
I mean, I would stand out of courtesy, but I certainly wouldn't do anything else with it.
Well, yeah, well, I mean, the 3 raps you'd stand. That's how we get
I mean, I
them to
might
stand
take
up.
a knee as well, actually, because you know that's
Oh, well,
a
yes,
sign of
but
respect. Well,
you're not a football player, even one of your football players, much less one of our football.
Couldn't take a
actually,
knee even if
that's trouble
someone
over
wanted to.
here. We got them doing it as well now.
Yeah. But some people have argued, and I take their point, that mandating that you pledge allegiance to the flag is unmasonic because Masonry, we are not part of the government. We are not necessarily, I mean, you are a citizen of your country and you're supposed to, we do say this again, you're supposed to be a compliant citizen in your country and don't get engaged in rebellion and what all, but you know, you're a quiet and peaceful citizen. We're not mandating you prove your allegiance to your country in the lodge. It's not Masonic, just like we don't have a prayer to a specific religion. I get the point, but it's so much the custom in America that we say the pledge at almost every public meeting. I don't see it getting any traction. But I think some of the observant Mason guys who ran afoul of our Grand Lodge had stuff like that. It's like, well, we're not going to pledge the flag. You can't make me pledge the flag. It's not Masonic. So it's an easy way to piss people off is to get into it. It's easier just to go along and just do the pledge with everybody else. But anyhow, go on, Mike.
One thing that's interesting that's a corollary to this. In Maryland, they do one thing that I haven't seen in any other state. They actually stand up, and it's posted in all of their lodges. They have a Masonic creed, and they put their hand over their heart, and they all read this together.
Interesting.
And it's very interesting. It's very much really like the Apostles' Creed, but it's customized to Masonry.
Right.
I'll admit, I like the Pledge of Allegiance being done. I like it. I just think it's something special that we should continue. But
absolutely. Well, it's because in DeMolay, it is very much a part of the ritual, and that's not going away. But DeMolay preaches patriotism, and in the Scottish Rite, for example, we have at one time, I don't know if we still have one, but we had a committee on Americanism that would give a little talk at all of our, I think that went away at some point, but the Scottish Rite definitely pushes patriotism and Americanism, at least for the American Scottish Rite valleys. So they definitely would continue to do the pledge, even if the Grand Lodge decided they weren't going to do it in the Blue Lodge. But all the youth groups do it. I don't know. I don't see it going away. And I don't really see someone getting away with being in lodge and not standing and saying the pledge along with everybody else. But that's kind of a peer pressure thing.
One thing I do find somewhat interesting is, with Masonry saying you need to have, allegiance to your country. And you go back to our founding fathers in America, who many of them were Masons. They were able to break away from that in having the Revolutionary War.
Yes.
So somewhere, I'm guessing they talked some politics in the lodge as well. And so
they absolutely did. And I think the argument would be that you were standing against tyranny. So, it was no longer conscionable as Masons, and face it, Masons were instrumental in the revolution. I mean, there's so many who were involved at key areas. Would the Revolutionary War have happened if Masonry did not exist or did not have so many prominent Masons in it? Possibly, but it definitely did in large part to the Masons. And there's plenty of evidence that the Boston Tea Party was actually orchestrated in a Masonic lodge. Although, no, of course not. We don't talk politics, but plenty of evidence to be found that it was. But I do believe, yeah, that's a case where, you reach a point where it's like, well, we're standing against tyranny, so it's necessary that we are loyal to the idea of our country. But when the king is tyrannical, we must stand for freedom and choose that over loyalty to your government. But I guess you can make the argument today that what the king was doing is pretty mild stuff compared to the stuff our federal government is doing to us right now. A lot of people are saying we'd be dumping tea in the harbor by now. So, but I don't want to get too much into politics here. But definitely, we are definitely being taxed at a higher rate in this country than we ever were under King George.
Very much.
We rebelled over our 1% tax back then. So
I found the Maryland's Masonic.
oh, thank you, Mike. Yeah, that's in the chat for y'all if y'all want to see that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I appreciate y'all making do with our substitute paper today. I enjoyed it because as someone who has read, like I said, all of the papers that our research lodge has published that I managed to see, and knowing the history of A. Douglas Smith as well as Virginia Research, the men who were very active, Stuart Minor, A. Douglas Smith, and Alan Roberts, who were all in that, one wrote that paper and talked about the other, mentioned the third, all of those men were instrumental. If you go back and look at our papers, you will see certain names over and over and over again in the early years, and those three were among the most prominent. So it's interesting to fill in a picture of these men and what they did to bring about the research lodges in Virginia, especially the first two, and then the other ones came along sometime later. But it's always interesting to read about the early workings of research in Virginia, and it's only 70, 80 years ago. It's not like we've been around since the beginning of our Grand Lodge. So research as a concerted effort to have research bodies dedicated to Masonic education, it's a fairly recent innovation in the last 75 years that I see, where it's people were doing it on their own before then. And I'm sure there were other Masonic bodies out there, larger groups. He mentioned these conferences on education. But as far as for the average Mason to get into and join and be active in and focus on Masonic education, I'm grateful we have these things. And it's kind of fun to look into their origins. And it gives us something to look at and say, well, are we living up to the standards that those guys went into to bring it about? They served as master for years. He talked about the guy was junior deacon of Research Lodge for 8 years before he got to advance. We're actually kind of investigating that now, whether we want to have people stay in more than a year or two in the Research Lodge, because rotating through your Blue Lodge every year as master makes sense, because a lot of guys want to be master and you get a lot done in a year. I've seriously considered, I'm going through the chairs now and I'm talking to the other guys in line. We have trouble filling the chairs and rotating people through and rotating them out again. I have a lot I want to do for the Research Lodge, and I'm very seriously considering serving more than 1 year. And maybe a Research Lodge would be better off having people stay in line so we're not conferring degree work. We should be there planning where the Research Lodge is going, and to make it more useful to the Masons in our state and elsewhere, and to further education. So I'm thinking seriously about serving more than 1 year just to get done everything I want to get done.
Well, I think a big step forward was having a district deputy just for the research lodges.
Yes.
That was just recent, and he serves a 2-year term.
I think that helps. Yeah, because we should not be governed in the way a regular lodge is. If we only meet 4 times a year, it's kind of a waste to have one of your meetings dedicated to the district deputy for Richmond. I don't even know what it is. 1A, 15A, what is Richmond, Michael?
15A and B.
15A, yeah, 15A and B. It doesn't make sense for the district deputy of 15A to come to Virginia Research and spend our whole meeting talking about the Grand Master's plans for the year, considering, he's already visited all the lodges in Richmond, all the regular Blue Lodges, and given his plan. And we don't have to act on the vast majority of his plan because we're a research lodge. We don't have to participate in those things. We're doing that in our Blue Lodge, our regular Blue Lodge, our non-research regular blue. We're regular, we're blue, but our non-research based regular Blue Lodge that we belong to. That's where we comply with the Grand Masters program. So the research lodges should be a separate thing so we should be conducted differently, held to a different standard that's focused just on our research.
I did want to mention one other thing too that we were talking about earlier. It's interesting. I've been to 2 states, Delaware and Rhode Island, which are so small. They're about the size of 1 or 2 of our districts in Virginia. And in those states, they see the Grand Master several times a year in each lodge. In both of those states, because what is there, like 10 lodges in one of those states, or no more than 12 or something.
Yep.
So they all know their grand masters, and just about if you're a district deputy in that state, you're pretty much guaranteed by going to being a grand master.
How many districts do they have?
Oh, it's
like 2. Do they even need to bother?
Like I said, between like 8 and 12 between those 2 states.
Okay. In Alaska, there are 12 lodges in Alaska.
Mm-hmm.
And what really surprised me is Virginia, a few years back, we recognized the Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Alaska. And I heard that. I said, wait, there are not only enough black men in Alaska in the first place to actually have masonry, but to have a Grand Lodge, that's impressive. I didn't think too many black people would want to live in Alaska personally, but there's 12 lodges in the Grand Lodge of Alaska, 12. Each one is in a different city. And the only way to get to most of those cities is by plane.
Mm-hmm.
Can't drive there. The ones that are inland, you can't take a boat there, but the ones on the coast you can. But most of them, the only real way to get anywhere is by private. They have a lot of private planes, and you fly by plane to get there. So I can't imagine being a Mason in Alaska, but and that's got to be an effort for the Grand Master to visit all of them.
You can imagine some state like Texas that had like 350 lodges spread out.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Well, we were 300, but yeah, they're really spread out. I really had hoped, Michael, when I was living in DC and while I was living in the Maryland area, I really wanted to take a year and go visit every single lodge in DC because there's like 24 of them. And I wanted to get a group together. I never got to put it together and move back down here. But that was my goal, is to get a bunch of Masons together in Northern Virginia, Maryland, and DC, get a group of us together and say, look, we're going to start in January and we will visit every single lodge in DC over the course of the year. Because there's only like 25 of them. You could easily do it. You map it out, figure out this meets on the 3rd full moon of whatever. I mean, they have some squirrely times when they meet, some of them, and make an effort to attend and get a group to go together and visit every single one of them over the course of a year. I thought that would have been really fun to do, but I went there long enough. And of course I can't do it now. I live too far south, but I was close enough I could do on a given night, just travel to one. But I always thought that'd be fun. And that way, say you could visit every lodge in a Grand Lodge. Not many people get to do that. So. Anywho, we are next. I appreciate you all sticking around. We had 13 people for a time. Most of you all stuck around here to the end. We're still at, we got 8 left. We have our next unstated meeting will be on Saturday, November 19th. That is 2 weeks from today. I know last week I kept saying November 5th, and I said 2 weeks. So I hope I didn't confuse anyone. Grand Lodge is next week. That's why these are back to back, because I didn't want to wait 3 weeks for the next one. So Grand Lodge is next week. You all enjoy Grand Lodge if you're going. But 2 weeks from now, on Saturday, November 19th at 10 a.m., we will have Worshipful Lee Eccleston, who will talk about the immediate past master and the 47th problem of Euclid. So that should be most interesting. And we just had Brother Elias get back in. So that is in 2 weeks. We do have speakers planned out for October. We aren't going to have a meeting during Grand Lodge, and we are not going to have a meeting over Thanksgiving, although that doesn't affect our British brothers. But we won't have one over Thanksgiving. So we will have a speaker on December 3rd and December 17th. And then looking forward, we'll have one January 7th. So I do have people booked out all the way to March, actually. So we do have one basically every 2 weeks in December and into January. So, and we do have our stated will be on December 10th. Please like and subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube. To those of us here in person, I do appreciate all you brothers coming out. Some of you are becoming regulars, and it's good to have you here over and over again. And we do our best to keep providing interesting content of interest to my brother Masons. Anybody have anything to say before we close out?
If I could sell up the Lee Eccleston one a bit, he's actually a professor of mathematics, and he's the prize master of a lodge in Poland, which means he created the lodge, he created the ritual, he creates everything.
Oh,
so
wow.
It should be an interesting talk.
Oh, definitely interesting. So yes, I am looking forward to that. I've talked to Lee a few times online, and I think you probably referred him to me, Brian. So I appreciate it if you did. If any of you knows of a speaker, or if you're interested in being a speaker yourself, by all means, please message me. I am always looking to line up new speakers. I want to give an opportunity. I just take it like, say, Andy, who probably is not. Have you never presented a paper in a lodge, or have you?
I have in a lodge.
Okay.
But never anywhere else.
Okay. If you are someone who, say, wants to give a paper sometime, and you haven't before, and you want to give it in your lodge, I'm willing to offer this platform for someone to be a first-time speaker, because it's probably easier to give a talk in a Zoom meeting than at a lodge. Some people may be nervous about speaking in front of a large crowd. I can promise we're generally not a large crowd, but we're at least a crowd. We're a dozen or so crowd. But I think it may be easier to ease into giving a paper. So I want to make sure that's available. If people want to give a paper for the first time or get back into giving papers, we're happy to receive you here. It may be easier for you to get practice before you go present in your lodge. So that's always an option.
I got a quick story, Brother Chris.
Please, go ahead.
I had been in the lodge about 6 months when I learned the first degree lecture. Mm-hmm. And I visited another lodge, and the brother that coached me was a member of that lodge. I did not know that they were going to have a first degree that day. He told me he wanted me to do the lecture. So after some discussion, I agreed to do it. And of course, I had visited that lodge multiple times. I knew most of them. And as a kid, I did 4-H demonstrations. I did public speaking. But I had never been so nervous in all of my life. And my hands were sweating, my knees was knocking, and I got to the very last 3 paragraphs of the lecture where they talk about chalk, charcoal, and clay. And the senior deacon's beeper went off. He was a volunteer fireman. His beeper went off. And that just wiped me out. And I looked over at Brother Claude, and he said, I said, Claude, I need help. He said, just back up and start that part over. And I did, and I finished it. And about 6 months later, I had learned the 3rd degree lecture, and I was doing it in my lodge for the first time. Had never done it. And the worst part was there was nobody there to help me if I got in trouble. Mm-hmm. And our lodge was right across the street from the fire department. At that time, about 50 feet outside the back door was a water tower. And the siren was at the top of that tower. I got up to the last part of the lecture. My brother, let us imitate the example, blah, blah, blah. That siren went off. And I stopped and waited for it to finish. And I remember what Brother Claude told me. I backed up and I started that part over. I have never forgotten that. So, if you get nervous, it'll be all right.
I think God's trying to tell you shouldn't give lectures, but I don't know.
Well, no, I've been doing
Andy, I've told you twice, Andy. What more you want?
But that's the I had one other one that was worse, but I got through it. So, but I did make an impression on the candidate, because about 3 years later, he saw me at a York Rite meeting. He said, "I remember you," and he told me the story. So
it'd have been funny if it was the same guy getting both degrees. That would
no.
But, well, I do say this, that there are some of us. Okay, some of us are really good at ritual. Some of us are good at giving the lectures. We enjoy giving the lecture. It's prepared. It's written down. You just have to meet with your coach and feed it into you over and over and over again. You work on the inflections and the pausing, and the pausing is critical because when you speak and you're giving a lecture, it is critical that you stop at the right time. And it sounds so much better than the candidate that you can just simply walk through and just say, don't stop. The pausing is critical. That's a certain skill set. Another skill set is getting up in public and writing, giving a paper you've written and delivering it with passion and to interest the people. And I feel fortunate I can do both of those things. I know some brothers who can do one and not the other, and the other and not the one. I just don't mind getting up and gabbing in front of an audience. So I'm good at both, but it's a different skill set delivering both. Because anyone can be taught to memorize, but giving a paper, writing a paper and then giving it, it explores a different skill set than ritual. But they overlap.
And it's worse when you get up. There's two kinds of people that if I'm in a room and they're doing a paper, it's the person that talks with a monotone and he never changes his tone of voice.
Yes.
And then the person that has trouble reading it.
Right.
It's like he's trying to read something he's never looked at.
Yep. Now, I'll say, in all fairness, without bragging, I've shown up in like Scottish Rite and they say, hey, can you do orator in this degree? Sure. People will hand me a paper. I will glance at it and I'll get up there and read it and you'll think that I wrote it myself. I feel grateful that I have the talent of being able to read well. You give me something to read and it looks like I've never seen it before, but I can deliver it. And so I try to use that talent. I know there are plenty of people who they could read something 15 times and know it and still have trouble reading and get stuck on the words.
I like to read over it one time just to know what I'm reading.
Yes. But that thing today, I haven't read that paper since I read it when I put it out there a year or two ago. So I just read through it. But anyway, we all have talents. I mean, I sound like I'm bragging a little bit, and I am, but that's okay. We all have talents. Every one of you has talents, and you should take those gifts and give them back to your lodge. Whatever you're good at, find a way to give that back to your lodge. I feel that I take the talents I have, I put them back into masonry, and I feel good knowing I'm giving of myself. So if I could just figure out a way to get through everyone and say, look, find what you're good at and give that back to your lodge, it will always be appreciated and you will make your lodge better. Not everyone is a good ritualist. Some of us are better cooks than others. Be a cook. Cook meals for your lodge. If you're good at planning events, host an event for your lodge. If you're good at whatever it is you're good, if you're really good at maintaining the grass and the shrubs and all that around your lodge, maintain your lodge's landscaping. Do something. If you're a carpenter, if you're an electrician, whatever it is, give your time back to the lodge, whatever you're good at. Some people are good at designing websites and doing all of this high-tech stuff. Give your talents back to your lodge. They need it. And if every one of us just came to the lodge and said, look, I'm good at this. Where can you use me? If we all did that, all of our lodges would be doing so much better. And people don't think to go and give their time. So please, give of yourself. Give yourself to your lodge and you will return 100-fold. And there's no better feeling than knowing you've done something for the sake of your brothers. So that's my sermon for the day. I'll step down off my soapbox. Thank you all for coming out, brothers. I do appreciate y'all sticking out. Okay, you all have a wonderful day, and we'll see you all in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.
2 weeks.